Hey everyone, here's a quick video on how we approach product development for our open social product, which is a software as a service that we purchase from the vendor. So it's not an in-house software that we produced and developed, but we purchase the technology from a vendor. But somehow we can participate to product development, and here is how. So first of all, what is product development? It's essentially everything, all practices that lead to a better version of a software tool. So whenever you fix a bug, whenever you request a new feature, a new functionality, new layout, everything that makes the product better or useful to achieve our vision, so to say. And for open social and for many other technology tools, we use Scrum practices and community-led decision making. We're gonna go and see what this means for us, but essentially, this is not a full Scrum course, but it's just notions on how we approach this, thanks to the great community of open social administrators and contacts in the NROs. Essentially what happens, why we are doing product development for open social, because we have a vision that came from the review, but is very old as a vision, but this sentence ideally includes everything we want open social or Greenwire to do at Greenpeace, which is essentially deliver a stable, reliable and trustworthy technology that changes our capacity to mobilize and organize volunteer activists, everyone that wants to do stuff for the environment and in their communities, regardless of the language they speak, where they live, stuff like that. Obviously, Greenwire as a technology must allow volunteers and coaches and our organization to connect and interact with people based on their interests, and ideally be integrated with all our engagement tools, so that we can export their data into other softwares, so that we can engage them better and more reliably over the course of the time, and we campaigns ultimately. Obviously, you cannot achieve a vision within a day or two. It's very unrealistic to have it all in one go, and that's where Scrum helps, right? The example of the cupcake is pretty common to use. You start from a solid base, something that stands on the left, which is usually called MVP, or minimum viable product. That is the starting base, and then you start building on top of it, achieving a marketable product or a lovable product, and ideally getting closer and closer to a product that reflects your vision, so to say. All these are called product versions, and there are major versions. So the cupcake with a little chocolate drop on top is a major version, and the little add-ons that you do between the chocolate and the final version are in-between versions, so minor versions. For open social, for example, we call these 10.x the major version and 10.x.2 the minor version, so to say. This is just semantics. What's important to note, however, is that Scrum works in a way that every version or every version of the product essentially is delivered in what we call sprints. Sprints are nothing else than temporal windows, so periods of time during which the development team work on this technology, essentially through a consistent and it works exactly the same. So windows are organized in the same way to deliver exactly the same process and end up with an increment of the tool, right? It always starts with a development phase, there is a testing phase, and then there is a deployment and a review before we go to the next phase. So by going through cycles of iterations, we ensure a continuity in product development, so to say. And obviously we don't slow down. Its Scrum approach is opposite to what we call waterfall approach. This is a very cool way to visualize how a company or organizational vision declines itself into everyday work, so to say. So we operate with open social in this sphere, the backlog one, and the product owner, or when we sit down at the beginning of the year and we decide our yearly roadmap, we operate on what we call strategy. Right, so the roadmap is essentially what we want to do over a longer course of time, whereas the backlog contains all activities to be planned. These two concepts are often mistaken, but it's important to understand, without being a senior technologist, that a roadmap describes how the product will develop over the long run. So 1, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever that is. And the backlog contains everything that needs to be planned for the sprints. So for the temporal windows of time that we operate, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so on. What does it mean, a backlog? So essentially, as we said, the backlog is full of tickets or list of stuff that needs to be done. And these elements, 6, 7, 8 tickets, whichever, as many as they fit in our sprint, they compose a list of stuff to be done in the backlog, which goes then through the process that we saw before: development, testing, release, and so on. And then, as we said before, each sprint must conclude itself with the delivery of an increment of the technology. Right? That's how essentially works. So what we do when we do backlog refinement is essentially deciding which tickets go into the sprint, and then Open Social will deliver the sprint itself. There are 4 types of tickets or elements of the backlog. The first one is the most common one, is the features, and is essentially a new functionality of the tool, right? Think, I don't know, as a user, I want to be able to join an event. It's a functionality that needs to be described to make sure that the development team understand what we want the software to do. So the first one is a new feature, and we do that all the time by requesting and continuously improving the technology. The second type is what we call bugs, and represent essentially a wrong behavior or an unexpected behavior of the software, which makes it difficult for users to complete a task. Essentially, when a button does not do what it's supposed to do, or we are unable to perform an activity, that's a bug, and that's the second type of ticket. The third one is investigation or knowledge acquisition tickets. Is everything that needs to be done to assess what is the problem. There is investigations to be done around, we need a new software to integrate with our tool. Which kind of software do we need? We need to actually understand if this bug exists and replicate it. And all these type of tickets that are not actually working, that do not involve work on the code, but knowledge acquisition, they are called investigations. The fourth type are just tickets that we Greenpeace don't really raise, but are tickets that are mostly raised by the development team itself, and are super useful to essentially keep our technology fit for the current web landscape. So every server migration, system update, installation of new security protocols and stuff like that. All these activities or backlog elements are tickets labeled as upgrades or system upgrades or technology upgrades. Okay. What does it mean? It means that regardless on the type of the ticket that we have, each ticket, every single one of them, feature, bug, knowledge acquisition, investigation, and tech upgrade, must go through the same journey. This element is created as a ticket. So whenever we report a bug or we request a new feature, we create a ticket in the Jira portal of Open Social. What must happen is that the team needs to refine and understand what this ticket is about. Is it clear? Is it clear what the problem is or what the new feature is? And essentially, by going through this refinement process, which is essentially a bi-weekly meeting that the development team goes through, they make sure they understand the problem and they estimate a resolution of it, so to say. So let's say they have a certain amount of hours, and they estimate that X hours, 3, 4, 6, whatever, are needed to fix this issue, essentially, or release the new feature. What happens is that once the ticket is refined and estimated, it has to be added to a sprint. Okay, so the following sprint, only then the ticket is ready to be added to the sprint. If we do not refine a ticket, it's impossible to add it to the sprint. Once the ticket is added to the sprint, the dev team does their magic, they crack the code, and they release the fix. They do an initial round of tests, but then they release usually the bug to a testing environment for us, for usually us as the clients, to go through something that is called UAT, user acceptance testing. That means that we have to say, yes, the bug is done, is fixed, good, is ready to be deployed, or no, actually, this is still happening. So we have the time to test this issue in not a public website, but in a test environment. And we all have test environments in our open social instances. Once the test is accepted, so good, the new feature is released or merged to all the websites, and only then, only at this fifth step, we can see the bug fix or the new release or the new feature released to all our sites. Everything that happens in these steps is behind the scenes work. This is a very simplified approach to technology development, but that's how it works. These are the critical steps: reporting, refinement, sprint work or sprint development, testing, and release. These are the 5 steps of each ticket. Each ticket has to go through these 5 steps, otherwise it's not closed. Very quickly, if we go to bit.ly OS backlog, we can go and see our big file, which we're gonna go through in a second. First of all, this file is available to everyone, and it's editable by everyone in this organization, so feel free to do it. We have backups of this. Don't be afraid of destroying it. It's a pretty straightforward file. It contains all the tickets that we have raised in the Open Social portal. So the column A is obviously the title. Be as clear as you possibly can. So you see in each cell that represents a column, there is a tiny description. So if we report a ticket that is tags issue, is not really clear. But if we mention we are not able to filter groups by tag in search, it's actually way more useful, okay? And we're gonna see how in a second. The second is the ticket number. Each ticket has a unique identifier, which is the ticket number that is reported in the Open Social portal. And these tickets are essential for Open Social to keep track of them, okay? Each ticket has to go through the life cycle that we saw before. Okay, it's composed by a title, and exactly every single field of this ticket is reported in our file. Okay, so title, ticket number, what this is about. This is about groups, content management, or any other areas that we may use Open Social for, data analytics and stuff like that. It's very useful to filter what kind of issue that is, if it's a bug, if it's an investigation, if it's a new feature, if it's a spam attack and stuff like that. What's the status? Again, if it's closed, if it's currently in development, if it's being tested, if it's already estimated and refined and needed and is ready for development, and all this. Then we have the estimation of Open Social, 1, 2, 3, 4 points, whatever that is. The sprint it needs to be allocated to. We're gonna go through sprint allocation in a second. And the priority, obviously, the sites, if it's one site or all the sites are impacted, by whom the ticket is raised, the votes, we go through it in a second, and the summary of the latest news, the life cycle, the steps of the life of the ticket. Okay. Obviously, there is also a full story of the ticket to have some sort of a background of what this is about, and then there are multiple columns for each office. Okay, so what happens in what we call community prioritization is that we have a common Open Social calendar, and you will see that sprints, so the temporal windows of development, are indicated as bi-weekly slots of time. Okay, what happens is that you see the sprints last 2 weeks. The Friday before the beginning of a new sprint, there is what we call shortlist day, which is essentially taking the time, everyone can do it, to select which tickets you would like the open social team to work on for the next sprint. So the Friday and the Monday before the beginning of the next sprint, we decide what we want to do over the course of the next weeks. So that's how we prioritize and organize our backlog. What does it mean? If I am someone, I don't know, let's say working in CE, and I can either go through all of it, which is quite long, as you can see, or I can either filter by my own site, or just check out the latest tickets by going at the end of it, or even I have my users have reported issues about courses, or so I just clear all and just select the tickets that are about courses. Okay, so I have multiple ways of deciding which tickets I want to allocate to the next sprint. Okay, it's very important that you always look at this. There we go. At this column, so column G, because it tells you which sprint is the next one all the time. So let's say that next Friday, before the start of the next sprint, which is 79, let's say that I am next Friday, 28th of January, I have to shortlist for the sprint 79. So what I'm gonna do is to go inside here and let's say select again all my tickets that I want. And I would like, I don't know, the open social team to work on these two. So all I'm gonna do is to add 79 to the tickets that I want. All right. So these two tickets are being raised by the CE people, and these are applicable to all. But I think it's important for my team. So as we can see now, all these three tickets, what happens on the Monday is that there is a voting day. Okay, you obviously can do both shortlisting and vote the same day, but normally on Monday, NROs can vote, and it's written in the description that every NRO has 10 points to allocate to the sprint. This is how we allocate. So if I go to my, let's say again that I am part of the CE, I can either allocate all my points to one ticket because it's the most critical part of it, and you will see that the points are reported here, or I can allocate, let's say 2, 3, and 5. I can just choose. I cannot allocate more because it will become red. So I have to make sure that all my 5 points are distributed in the tickets according to my needs. And obviously, if someone else, let's say Germany, is also interested in this ticket, they allocate a lot of points, and so on. So this is how essentially we make sure that the community expresses their preferences and prioritize in a common way, so to say, what needs to be done. What happens is that myself and Anastasia will go through once the voting closes, usually on the Monday, and we assess which tickets needs to be sent to Open Social. We see which tickets are the most popular. If these are not, obviously these are not estimated, so it will happen like this. They will be added to refinement, okay? Or if they are ready for development, they will just add it to the sprint, okay? Replicating this life cycle, okay? So tickets that are not refined, but that are popular, that are voted, are asked to be refined. Tickets that are voted and that are already refined are added to the sprint. I hope all this makes sense. If you have any questions, please let us know. And thanks for making it happen.